At 79, I couldn't button my shirt without pain shooting through my fingers. I couldn't sleep through the night without my knees throbbing. Doctors called it just aging, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. What if I told you, a simple turmeric mix, used daily, reversed it all? Not overnight. Not by magic. But by unlocking my body's forgotten ability to heal. This isn't a trend. It's not a supplement ad. It's the truth I lived, and today, I'm sharing it with you, because no one deserves to suffer in silence. Part 1, the day it all changed. It was the middle of February when I first noticed something was truly wrong. For years, I had quietly endured the slow decline of aging, the aches in my knees, the stiffness in my hands, the weight of fatigue that would roll over me like waves by mid-afternoon. But this day was different. I tried to rise from bed, and my legs just wouldn't cooperate. My joints felt locked, as if rust had settled deep within them overnight. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my feet, wondering how things had spiraled so far. I was 79, and for the first time, I felt genuinely afraid that I might lose my independence entirely. That morning, I shuffled to the kitchen, every step a negotiation with pain. Pouring a glass of water took effort. My fingers, inflamed and swollen, barely curled around the handle. I remember thinking, is this it? Is this the part of life where I slowly fade out? It wasn't just physical. There was a fog in my mind, a sense of helplessness I hadn't known before. I had always been strong. Active. I had raised 3 children, worked full-time until retirement, and tended my garden with pride. But now, even lifting a watering can felt impossible. Part 2, the warning signs I ignored. Looking back, the signs had been there for years. Little red flags I brushed off or blamed on aging. My knees had started aching when I climbed stairs, and I assumed it was arthritis. My hands would swell slightly in the evenings, but I attributed it to overuse. I didn't realize that my body was silently inflamed, that the very tissues in my joints were under attack. No doctor ever gave me a straight answer. They offered painkillers, anti-inflammatories, and the usual advice, stay active, eat healthy. But I was already doing those things. Still, my strength declined. I began having trouble sleeping. Restless nights gave way to sluggish mornings. My digestion turned unpredictable. I even developed strange skin rashes that came and went without explanation. My daughter, a nurse, began nudging me to see a specialist. It could be chronic inflammation, she said gently. I smiled and nodded, but deep down, I was skeptical. I didn't understand how inflammation, something invisible, could cause such chaos throughout my body. That was, until I began reading. Part 3, the late-night discovery. One night, after another frustrating attempt to fall asleep, I turned on the television. A health program was discussing inflammation and aging. A soft-spoken doctor explained how systemic inflammation isn't just about joints. It affects memory, energy, digestion, sleep, even your mood. He said it was like a silent fire burning in the background, weakening the body from the inside. That's when it hit me, this wasn't just arthritis. This was something bigger. And if I didn't act now, I might never regain control. The program mentioned natural anti-inflammatories. One in particular stood out, turmeric. I had heard of it before, of course. That golden yellow spice used in curries. But I didn't know it had medicinal value. The doctor explained how curcumin, the active compound in turmeric, was a powerful inflammation fighter. More importantly, he mentioned that turmeric must be paired with black pepper or healthy fats to be absorbed by the body. That detail stuck with me. The next day, I opened my laptop and started researching turmeric. I watched testimonials, read peer-reviewed articles, and even joined a health forum for seniors dealing with inflammation. Over and over again, I saw people praising a simple turmeric mix they had started taking daily. It wasn't a miracle. But it was helping them regain control, just as I desperately needed to. Part 4, Uncovering the Root Cause. In the weeks that followed, I plunged headfirst into research. I wasn't just looking for comfort, I wanted clarity. Why was my body acting like it was decades older than my age? What I discovered shocked me. Chronic inflammation wasn't just about joint pain. It was a central player in nearly every age-related disease, heart problems, cognitive decline, even depression. In fact, one medical journal called it the silent killer of old age. Unlike acute inflammation, which protects the body during injury, chronic inflammation lingers in the background, triggered by poor diet, lack of movement, stress, and cellular aging. It explains so much: my brain fog, the fatigue that came out of nowhere, the bloating, the stiffness. But what stunned me most was that turmeric had been studied in clinical settings with positive results. A study in the journal Phytotherapy Research found that curcumin supplements reduced pain and improved function in patients with osteoarthritis as effectively as some non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, without the side effects. Another study from the University of Arizona demonstrated turmeric's ability to downregulate inflammatory markers like TNF-alpha and IL-6. These weren't just anecdotes, these were data-backed discoveries. So, I decided to take control. I wouldn't let this slow-burning fire take my independence. I began crafting a mix, simple, natural, and backed by science. Part 5: Building the Turmeric Mix. I was cautious. I had tried supplements before, some worked, others didn't. But this time, I wanted to do it right. I revisited that doctor's words about absorption. Curcumin, the active compound in turmeric, is notoriously difficult for the body to absorb on its own. It needs help. Black pepper contains piperine, a compound that enhances curcumin absorption by up to 2,000%. Healthy fats, like coconut oil or ghee, also increase its bioavailability. I jotted down a recipe I found through a trusted medical herbalist online. 1 teaspoon of organic turmeric powder. 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. 1 teaspoon of virgin coconut oil. 1 cup of warm water or almond milk. Every morning, before breakfast, I would stir these ingredients together until they formed a golden paste, then add the liquid. It tasted earthy and slightly spicy, but I grew to love it. More importantly, I made it a ritual, a moment of healing that began my day. I gave myself a simple goal: drink this mix every morning for 30 days. No skipping. No excuses. And I didn't stop there. I cut back on processed foods, added leafy greens to my diet, and took short daily walks to get my circulation going. I wasn't expecting miracles. I just wanted to feel human again. Part 6: The First Signs of Change. Around the 10-day mark, I noticed something subtle. I had slept through the night, deeply, peacefully, for the first time in weeks. It wasn't just sleep, it was real rest. I woke up before my alarm, and for the first time in months, my hands weren't as swollen. The stiffness in my knees was still there, but it loosened quicker after waking. By the second week, I was walking longer distances without needing to stop. I could lift my watering can again. I remember standing on my porch, looking at my little garden, and feeling a strange sense of triumph. The inflammation hadn't disappeared, but it was no longer in charge. Mentally, I felt sharper. The fog that had dulled my focus began to lift. My digestion also improved. I was no longer bloated after meals, and my appetite returned to normal. Even my daughter noticed. "You look brighter," she said one afternoon, tilting her head with surprise. "What have you been doing?" I told her everything: how the turmeric mix had become my lifeline, how changing my diet and building consistency was giving me my body back. She was thrilled. She even began making the mix herself, and soon after, my neighbor wanted the recipe too. At that point, I knew this wasn't just about a drink. This was about reclaiming my health, one simple habit at a time. Part 7: From Temporary Relief to Lasting Routine. By the time week 4 rolled around, the changes weren't just internal, they were visible. I was moving more freely, waking up with less discomfort, and had a newfound energy. But what surprised me most was how my mindset had shifted. This turmeric mix was no longer just an experiment. It had become a ritual, and that ritual transformed into a foundation for a new lifestyle. I realized that healing wasn't about one magical ingredient. It was about building a system of small, powerful habits that work together. Turmeric started the journey, yes, but so did my walks, my improved sleep, the clean food on my plate, and the mental calm I created by just slowing down. I added light stretches every morning. I included leafy greens like kale and spinach into my diet more regularly, packed with anti-inflammatory compounds like lutein and quercetin. I also began sipping warm chamomile tea before bed to ease nighttime tension. These weren't hard changes. They just needed consistency. I read that inflammation could be influenced not just by what we eat, but also by what we think. Chronic stress increases cortisol, which fans the flames of inflammation. So, I also added 5 minutes of deep breathing or gentle meditation before bed. I noticed my pulse steady. My face softened. I was reconnecting with my own body again. Part 8, when the doctor noticed. It was during my next routine checkup that my doctor raised an eyebrow. "Your markers look better," he said, flipping through my chart. "What have you changed recently?" I told him everything, from the turmeric mix to my dietary shifts to my short morning walks. He smiled and nodded. "You've taken your inflammation seriously, and it's paying off." My CRP levels, C-reactive protein, a key marker of inflammation, had dropped into a healthy range. My blood pressure had stabilized. Even my joint mobility, especially in my wrists and knees, had improved noticeably. We talked about how food can serve as medicine when it's approached with purpose. He explained that curcumin's power lies in its ability to regulate inflammatory pathways, and when combined with lifestyle changes, its effects are amplified. "This isn't about replacing medicine," he said. "It's about enhancing health from the ground up, naturally, and sustainably." Leaving that clinic, I didn't just feel hopeful, I felt empowered. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of my own aging. I understood it. I had tools. I had control. Part 9, sharing the journey. Soon, my transformation became impossible to ignore. Friends from my old walking group began asking me what I was doing. My sister, who struggled with stiffness in her fingers, asked for my turmeric recipe. Even my grandson, seeing me move with more ease, hugged me tighter than usual and said, "You feel strong again, Grandma." I started keeping a small journal, not just of what I was eating or how I felt physically, but of what was changing emotionally too. My confidence was rebuilding. I no longer dreaded stairs. I no longer feared mornings. And most importantly, I was beginning to trust that healing at 79 wasn't just possible, it was happening. I began preparing the turmeric mix for others too, my neighbor Martha, who had severe back pain, and my cousin Ruth, whose knees ached every winter. Within weeks, they too noticed subtle improvements. Less pain. More movement. Better sleep. It reminded me that healing isn't a solo act. It's a ripple. When one person takes charge of their health, others are inspired to do the same. My morning mix had become more than a drink. It was a symbol of choice, choosing action over fear, nourishment over neglect, nature over chemicals. And as I stirred that golden cup every morning, I reminded myself, I am not broken. I am healing. Part 10, Curcumin and its biological power. By now, I had embraced the mix, but curiosity led me deeper into understanding why it worked so effectively. I started reading more about curcumin, the bright yellow compound inside turmeric, and discovered it wasn't just folklore or cultural tradition. It was backed by decades of real science. Curcumin is a powerful polyphenol with strong anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. What makes it remarkable is its ability to target multiple pathways in the body, especially the NF-κB signaling pathway, which plays a major role in chronic inflammation and pain. It doesn't just block inflammation like a synthetic drug, it calms it down at the source, working with your body rather than overpowering it. This compound also supports the activation of something called NRF2, a protein that regulates the expression of antioxidant proteins. In simple terms, curcumin helps your body protect itself at the cellular level. That means reduced oxidative stress, slower aging of tissues, and more energy being available for healing. But here's the catch: curcumin is not very bioavailable on its own. That's why so many people try turmeric and feel no difference. They're missing the critical step. Part 11, the key to absorption, the missing pieces. I learned that curcumin needs help to be absorbed properly. That's where black pepper, and more specifically, a compound called piperine, enters the scene. Piperine enhances the absorption of curcumin by up to 2,000%. Yes, 2,000%. That's not just a small boost, it's the difference between results and waste. That's why the turmeric mix I used wasn't just turmeric, it also included a pinch of black pepper and healthy fats like coconut oil or almond milk, which further increase curcumin's solubility. Curcumin dissolves in fat, so having it with a lipid source ensures it travels through the digestive system and into the bloodstream efficiently. Some days, I would blend the mix into warm coconut milk. Other times, I stirred it into my morning oatmeal with a spoon of chia seeds. The results stayed consistent. The formula was simple: turmeric, black pepper, a little healthy fat, and warmth. But the effect? It was transformative. What I learned changed the way I saw natural remedies. They weren't just old wives' tales or feel-good fads. They were intelligent, scientifically supported tools, when used correctly. And most people simply didn't know the right way to use them. Part 12, what to avoid during the healing process. Just as important as what I added to my life was what I removed. Inflammation doesn't come out of nowhere, it's often fueled by what we consume daily without a second thought. I looked closely at my old diet and spotted culprits hiding in plain sight. Refined sugars, processed oils, white bread, and even diet sodas, these were quietly keeping my body in a state of irritation. They caused blood sugar spikes, increased cortisol, and put pressure on my joints without me realizing it. So I began eliminating them, one by one. I swapped canola oil for cold-pressed olive oil. Replaced white rice with quinoa. I cut back on dairy and started using plant-based alternatives that didn't trigger my immune system. And most importantly, I reduced my salt intake and focused on using natural herbs and spices for flavor, things like ginger, cumin, and garlic. Within weeks, not only did the turmeric mix work more effectively, but I also started noticing changes in my skin, digestion, and mental clarity. My sleep improved. My thoughts felt sharper. I wasn't just treating inflammation anymore, I was cleansing it out of my system completely. I didn't follow a strict diet. I followed an aware diet. Every ingredient either fed my pain or fought it. And once I knew which was which, the choices became easier. Part 13, morning rituals that rewire the body. Once I had the turmeric mix and my dietary changes in place, I started crafting a routine that supported healing, not just for a day or a week, but for life. Every morning, I would begin my day not with coffee, but with a warm cup of turmeric mix infused with cinnamon, black pepper, and coconut milk. This wasn't just a drink, it became a moment of calm, a form of nourishment for my body and my mind. I would sip it slowly, sitting by the window, letting my body wake up gently. No phone, no screens, just me, the golden drink, and the morning light. What I discovered was fascinating. This one ritual began changing my entire day. My joints felt less stiff even before I moved. My digestion kicked in with ease. My cravings for sugar in the morning dropped significantly. And because the drink was anti-inflammatory, I felt less bloated and more grounded before breakfast. I paired this ritual with 10 minutes of slow stretching. Nothing strenuous, just mindful movement to loosen the hips, knees, and lower back. Some days I used a resistance band, other days I just sat on the floor and gently moved. These two actions, combined with the turmeric mix, created a trifecta of healing, nourishment, movement, and mental clarity. Part 14, the role of sleep and evening turmeric doses. While morning routines set the tone, I realized that evening habits determined whether my body could actually repair overnight. Poor sleep leads to cortisol spikes and systemic inflammation, no matter what you're eating. So I began taking a second, smaller dose of the turmeric mix at night, this time, blended with warm almond milk and a touch of honey. I'd drink it about an hour before bed, right after turning off electronics and switching to dim lights. The result was astonishing. I started falling asleep faster. But more importantly, I stayed asleep through the night. I would wake up feeling like my joints had been repaired in my sleep rather than punished by it. There was no morning stiffness, no hobbling out of bed, no wincing while brushing my teeth. Just smooth, natural movement. This is because curcumin doesn't just reduce inflammation, it also supports healthy melatonin levels and helps regulate neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, which affects sleep quality and mood. By supporting sleep, I was helping my body heal more effectively, every night. Sleep, I realized, wasn't passive. It was my body's repair mode, and turmeric was making it more effective. Part 15, Lifestyle Tweaks that Reinforce the Healing. Alongside these rituals, I made other small but powerful changes. None of them were overwhelming. But together, they created a foundation for healing that felt almost automatic. I started walking daily, just 20 minutes, nothing extreme. Sometimes I walked in silence. Other times, I listened to calming music or nature sounds. These walks not only helped my joints stay mobile, but also supported my mood, circulation, and digestion. I began drinking more water, at least 8 glasses a day. Not just to stay hydrated, but to help flush out the byproducts of inflammation. The turmeric mix was working inside, breaking down inflammatory compounds, but water helped carry them out. I also started incorporating other natural anti-inflammatory foods into my week. Things like wild blueberries, chia seeds, leafy greens, and fermented foods like kimchi or sauerkraut. These supported gut health, which in turn supported immune function, because 70% of the immune system lives in the gut. And lastly, I limited my stress. I couldn't eliminate all stress, of course, but I could choose how I reacted to it. I started doing 5-minute breathing exercises whenever I felt anxious. I started journaling at night, just a few lines to release tension from my mind. And I allowed myself more rest, without guilt. Together, these lifestyle tweaks didn't replace the turmeric mix, but they amplified it. They created a healing environment inside my body, so the mix could do its job more powerfully. Part 16, Real Results that Changed Everything. By the end of the second month, something remarkable happened. One morning, I was tying my shoelaces to go for my walk, and I paused. Not because I felt pain, but because I didn't. The usual tightness around my knees was gone. My back wasn't stiff. My fingers didn't ache. For the first time in years, I had started my day feeling normal. I walked longer that day. My posture was better. My breath was deeper. My pace was steady. And the entire time, I kept thinking, this is what freedom feels like. Not dramatic, not flashy, just quiet, powerful freedom from the discomfort that had once ruled my life. When I looked in the mirror, I noticed subtle changes too. The puffiness in my face had reduced. The inflammation in my belly had calmed. My eyes looked brighter. Even my skin tone appeared healthier. It was as if my body was finally at peace with itself. I realized this wasn't just about turmeric. It was about giving my body what it needed and removing what was harming it. The turmeric mix was the turning point, but the habits I built around it sustained the healing. Part 17, What Science Now Confirms About Turmeric's Power. Curcumin, the active compound in turmeric, has been the subject of hundreds of studies in the past decade. What scientists have found mirrors exactly what I experienced. Curcumin has been shown to inhibit the NF-kappa B molecule, a key player in chronic inflammation. This is the same pathway activated in conditions like arthritis, Alzheimer's, and heart disease. By blocking it, curcumin reduces the root cause of these conditions, not just the symptoms. Moreover, curcumin is a powerful antioxidant, capable of neutralizing free radicals that damage cells and tissues. When combined with piperine from black pepper, its bioavailability increases by up to 2,000%, meaning the body can absorb and use it much more effectively. There's also research showing that turmeric improves endothelial function, which supports healthy blood vessels, and may even reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. Other studies suggest it supports brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, helping protect against age-related cognitive decline. These aren't just theoretical benefits. I live them. My memory improved. My energy returned. I could focus better. I felt like myself again, only lighter, clearer, and calmer. And I wasn't alone. When I began sharing my story with friends and neighbors, many of them tried the same mix. The feedback was astonishing. One woman reversed her knee stiffness within 3 weeks. Another finally found relief from postmenopausal joint pain. An elderly gentleman with chronic shoulder pain reported his range of motion returning after years of limited movement. This wasn't a miracle, it was nature and consistency working together. Part 18, my final message to you. If you've been living with chronic inflammation, whether it shows up as joint pain, fatigue, swelling, or stiffness, you don't have to accept it as a life sentence. You don't have to surrender to the story that this is just aging. I'm here to tell you that the body has an extraordinary capacity to heal, even at 79. But healing doesn't come from pills that mask symptoms. It comes from nurturing your body with what it truly needs, day after day, with patience and love. For me, that began with a turmeric mix. Simple, golden, ancient. But what truly transformed my life was the commitment to change, one small habit at a time. So if you're standing at the edge of frustration, feeling defeated by your pain, let this be your invitation to try. Not just for a day, but for a few weeks. Give your body a chance to respond. It may take time. But trust me, it's worth it. Start with the mix. Choose high-quality turmeric. Add a pinch of black pepper. Mix it into warm almond or coconut milk. Drink it daily. Move your body gently. Reduce processed foods. Hydrate. Sleep deeply. Breathe intentionally. And soon, like me, you may wake up one morning surprised not by pain, but by peace. Because healing isn't a destination, it's a rhythm. And once you fall into it, your body will remember the path back to strength, lightness, and joy.